Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome to another episode from WrestleLine. I'm your host John Scott, joined as always by my co-host Matt Essex. And Matt, how you doing this week? Obviously we've just coming off of our little back-to-back night in the UK at the Royal Albert Hall this week. But how you feeling? Are you back into the real realm of normal working life again after a little trip away?
It takes a little bit of adjustment coming back from a little trip away, but you know, you get back into swing of things not too long after that. I mean, all I can hope for is that there'll be more wrestling on that coming over soon, because it's always good to see when they make an effort and the Americans come over here and put on a show for us. But then saying that, you know, what we saw was our own homegrown talent. You know, we're more than capable of putting on a great show as well, it seems.
Yeah, it was a really good couple of nights. We are going to talk about that on the show, but we're not going to give any spoilers away. But we will be talking about it because I had loads of emails about it, how that went down, and I know a lot of people had seen the news. So I'll give you a heads up when there might be any spoilers to come across in this podcast. But coming up on the show, we're going to be talking about Big Cass, of course, leaving the WWE quite quickly, quite promptly this week. That was made the news, made the rounds. Also some news on, we've got loads. See, this is the thing with this, Matt. The game never does well, but it certainly grabs attention. We're going to be talking 2K19. Had loads of emails about the cover. So going to be talking a little bit about that. Plus the Money in the Bank fallout from Raw and SmackDown as well, where they're heading into Extreme Rules and to SummerSlam. Plus we've got a little bit of Ring of Honor news from this past week. Also, how about Dave Meltzer actually breaking his own star ratings for the Kenny Omega Okada match, which I've not actually seen yet, but we're going to discuss that a little bit on the show as well. Plus the fallout, Matt, we've got to do it. Unfortunately, we've got to go back here. We've had loads of emails. CM Punk, what's next for him after the UFC fight, I guess, if you call it that. Plus NXT, how they're doing and where that's going. Some news as well from the ITV World of Sport as well. Going to be got some little bit of news on that, how that went down with some of the tapings. A little bit of Hulk Hogan as well thrown in there as always, and I'm sure much more. But Matt, got to start with some sad news straight at the top of the show. Unfortunately, somebody who is, you know, not just throwing this out there. You can go back to all our old podcasts in the Wrestling Skull, but we've always had so much praise and people really interested in this guy, Big Van Vader. Of course, Leon White, real name, sadly passed away this week. Kind of, you know, been battling for quite a while now. So at the age of 63, unfortunately, passed away this week. I know his son sent a message out about it on social media to kind of let everybody know. But let me just read that out actually while we're here. It says, around a month ago, my father was diagnosed with a severe case of I think it was the cancer, wasn't it, Matt? Is that right? I think on that one. Sorry, I can't get the whole message here. It's not uploading very well. He fought extremely hard and clinically was making progress. Unfortunately, on Monday night, his heart had enough, and it was his time. So, you know, an incredible career, I think, from Vader. I think that sad news all round, no doubt about that. But you know, I'm going to say this much, and I know people will think, well, we're taking a bit of a personal stance from it, but I do really feel that, you know, when this news broke about, you know, Vader kind of having all these problems with his health, you know, this was a good 2 years ago now, and I kind of thought to myself, like, why would WWE not consider this guy going into the Hall of Fame, you know, a little bit quicker, because you know what the circumstances are. Now I know, don't get me wrong, there are times where most wrestling, when all these things happen, when guys you know, pass away too early or whatever, they come out of the blue, and you know, sometimes just the timing wasn't there. But in this case, I do really feel like WWE should have done a little bit more, should have reached out to Leon a little bit and give him, you know, maybe that little bit of hope to look forward to something, considering the guy, had inducted a couple of years ago. He'd inducted Stan Hansen, so I thought it would only be right if maybe a year later he goes in himself. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and of course now this sad news. I mean, let's put it into perspective here, Matt. It'll be a no-brainer that Vader will go in the Hall of Fame at some point, won't it? So, what got me is, why didn't they just do it quicker?
Yeah, I mean, that is a big mystery. He's definitely got his name on the list of people that should be there by now already. And, of course, there's been a big outcry from the fans. I mean, they wanted him in there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I just think that it's a whole lot of politics, and just for WWE themselves, it probably wasn't the right time for them. But I'm not a big fan of that kind of attitude. It was the right time for Vader. If they had done it a couple of years ago or last year even, it would have meant the world to him. The guy would have really appreciated that validation, and they actually look back on his work and just to share that with the fans, that special moment, because sadly, a lot of people miss out on that.
Yeah, it is a shame. I mean, let's be frank. I mean, it's incredibly. When I was younger, my first, ever exposure to seeing Vader was actually mainly the WWF. Although I had seen him up against Ric Flair in WCW a few times, but I think most Vader fans will strongly agree that his best work was in Japan, and it was also in WCW, where he was, really used at quite a decent high level. You go back and watch his matches with Mick Foley, Sting, Ric Flair, who I just said then, they were incredible feuds, and he had some great matches there. Plus, his run in Japan was really what caught the eye of Jim Ross when he wanted him to come to WCW. Unfortunately, in WWE, I think there was kind of a lot of politics going on at the time around sort of SummerSlam '96 with him and Shawn. Which is the reason that didn't all sort of work out. I do remember there was like an In Your House pay-per-view that was called It's Time. It was like themed It's Time, and unfortunately it wasn't, because they because of some kind of crazy politics backstage, they kind of changed the plans, and they did this whole thing with Sid. So you won't say his best work's in WWE. However, saying that music, Matt, every time everybody heard that stuff, I mean, that got a huge pop. That was as good as, you put it up there with like the Road Warriors entrance. I think people naturally liked the theme, and it's one of those iconic music that really suits the character, suits the wrestler. Like, you couldn't think of a better theme for that guy when he comes down. So Jim Johnson there, give a shout out to him. So I really enjoyed Vader's work, and I know Vader's heavily popular on this podcast. I've had loads of emails, which are amazing, really. I think I've got to say, Matt, that between Vader and Sid are probably our most sort of talked about emails, about people being very curious about them. Maybe because they just don't really come out all that much, or they didn't come out and talk that much. I don't know. But we certainly get more questions about them than sort of, even like Hulk Hogan or anybody like that, who's, obviously, if you want to look up something for Hulk Hogan, it's quite easy to get hold of it, much like anybody else these days with shoot interviews. But I think Vader, he did do a few interviews, but he kind of kept his opinions to himself, and I think he was that way inclined. So a massive loss to the wrestling world, and of course, from everybody here at Wrestle, I want to, give our condolences to his family, and all the thoughts going with him and his family at this time, especially his son. And I know he will be in the Hall of Fame at some point. I'm 100% there, but I just think it would be so much better if some of these guys and people could actually receive it themselves, and I've got that before you get to this stage. And I do feel like WWE, this is one time they actually could have done that, because they knew what the circumstances were. They'd already reached out to Vader because he inducted Stan Hansen. So I don't really know why on earth this didn't happen a lot sooner. But that's my part of it. Matt, any particular experiences from yourself about Big Van Vader? Watching him growing up. Any experiences you want to share with us?
You go down in my books as one of the greatest big men that have ever wrestled. Just his agility and the way he used his size in that ring, and just the way that he entered every promotion. And in every promotion that he did, they saw just how good he was, and then they gave him his fair due of respect. From even wrestling when he had his eye pulled out and he had to push it back in. This guy was a genuinely tough guy, and got a lot of respect for him as well, because even after he was diagnosed with his heart problems, he still continued to wrestle. That was his passion. That's what he loved, and he didn't even care if it shortened his life, because that's what he lived for.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a fighter till the end, Vader, no doubt about that. For me, some of my best memories with him, are going to probably be from the WWF. But I enjoyed his stuff when he first came in, and of course he was the kind of, I guess, the usual sort of WWF target guy for a big nasty heel to come in. And they kind of paired him up with Jim Cornette, and they were doing the whole thing with Shawn Michaels, which I thought was really good at the time. But like Matt said, I think Van Vader. I'll say Van Vader and Bam Bam Bigelow are probably my two favourite, big guy workers, but I will put Vader just above Bam Bam, simply because I do believe he holds the record for like the heaviest guy to be able to do some of the stuff he was doing off like the top turnbuckle. That was kind of crazy for a guy of that size to be doing that, and he was quite tall as well. Like, people forget that he was an all-round big guy, and of course the iconic mask, Matt, which will always be remembered for Van Vader. That mask. If you've seen shots of him from Japan, you would have remembered he come out with this huge, great thing on his head. And that's where all that sort of started from in Japan. And then in WCW, he kind of like sized it down a little bit. But I thought, WWE, I don't think they kind of went with him enough, but he could have been a lot more, I think, to WWE. But I remember when he come back and he done the thing against Heath Slater, just how much of a pop he got, Matt, and everyone was chanting, "You've still got it. You can still wrestle, and one more match and all this." So he was always seemed to be in he must have been in a fairly decent shape to be able to keep doing that, and it looked like he hadn't missed a beat when he came back. So. Very sad news indeed on that one. I think that at some point the podcast, because of how popular he is, I'm sure we're going to do like a feature show on Vader, 100%, where we can maybe dive into those matches from Japan and WCW a little bit more as well. So I'm sure that will give everybody something that we can, kind of all share together, some memories for Vader there. So sad news to start on the podcast, unfortunately. So after that, we've got to talk current things. Does seem a little bit, nonsense compared to that. But of course, Matt, we got the breaking news. We was actually in London at the time, and I think we was actually on our second night watching the UK NXT, and we had Big Cass, the news that he'd been released from the WWE. And what fascinated me, Matt, more than anything, because I know there's lots of different rumours as to why floating around, but more than anything that spoke to me, Matt, is, did you notice that normally when WWE release guys, they always wish them well for the future, but they didn't to him? I saw that on a statement, and I was like, okay, that probably means he must have caused some sort of bother with somebody high up. Matt, lots of stories, lots of rumours. Of course, rumours and wrestling hand in hand as usual. But some of the rumours coming out, and some of the reports, should I say, about this is that there were incidents of him going off script, not perhaps getting on well with one of the biggest producers. Here's a name not many people know about, and when you think about hierarchy in WWE, he's always kind of in the shadows, man. He's always lurking around, because he's not somebody who faces out things, but he is such like a huge part of WWE, and that is, of course, the one of the biggest producers on the show, which is Kevin Dunn. And trust me, if you don't get on with him, he can be quite ruthless. I've heard he's even a little bit more ruthless than Vince at times, and he's been there for a hell of a long time. He's been there since day one, and he puts all those videos together. He produces even things like Total Divas and all this stuff. He's always got a hand in anything they're doing television wise, and he's quite high up. I think that most people would agree, but he's not somebody that fronts out the company. You don't see his